You remember this teacher that I had up here last time? She's back. She's back. She's still upset. And here's what she's saying this time. She is saying, "You think you are a PC or something?" Now, this is what teachers, I think you're close enough, I'm going to put this up. This is what teachers used to say when I was in school sometimes. They probably don't say that anymore. Because now the students would think, the teacher thinks I'm a computer? You know, what does PC mean? Is that a kind of computer, or does that mean person of color, or does that mean, politically correct? But no, back when I was a kid in school, what the teacher would say, "Do you think you are a privileged character?" And she would say that whenever someone would be doing something that maybe everybody didn't get to do or wasn't supposed to do. "Well, what do you think you are? You think you are a PC or something?" Well, back then I would say, "No, ma'am." But now I would say, "Well, yes, I am a PC. I am privileged." When one studies groups that are historically have privilege in the United States, I fall within most of those categories. I am a PC. I am a privileged character. Now, when I was a little girl, I didn't understand that at all. I knew there were folks that didn't have the kinds of things and opportunities that I had. But this is what I would say. I would say something like, "I feel sorry for the poor, disadvantaged children. And I did. "I'm glad our church sends missionaries so they will know that Jesus loves them too." And then I felt okay, But I've learned a little bit since then. I've learned about privilege, what privileges I have. Now, like sometimes we want to go back and say, what does that word mean? Well, if you go back for it originally, the Latin word, it's the Latin word for private law, meaning a law that was specific to a person, usually because of an office that person had. So we say that Barack Obama may have executive privilege to do some kinds of things. Because of his office, he has certain kinds of privileges, a private law. But it means so much more today. We hear the word, like our children and like that, has evolved to mean other things. And now, generally, it's a sociological concept that describes advantages enjoyed sometimes by a dominant group of individuals beyond what is commonly experienced by the non-dominant group in those same social spaces. And that can be connected to, those social spaces can be a nation or a community or a workplace. So here I am, Jane Page. I am a white, able-bodied, mentally healthy individual with opportunities that have allowed me to become well-educated, have good job opportunities, have economic security. I'm privileged. Some may say, "Well, Jane, you worked really hard for some of those," And indeed, I have studied hard. I have worked hard, like many of you have. I try and try even harder to eat right and exercise so I can stay healthy. But I don't kid myself. I have had a leg up on all of these things. On all of these things, to have these opportunities and be in those places. I have learned a little bit about privilege. Now some people say, well, there's earned privilege and there's unearned privilege. Some of those you earn, some are unearned because of our society. And I can understand that, but I think it's rather a hard thing sometimes to do, to distinguish between earned and unearned privileges. Because I know even the privileges that I worked hard for, I started on third base on many of those. I started ahead. So can I really say, that I know many of us in here have gone to school, we've gotten degrees, we worked hard for those kinds of things, but we had a leg up. Sometimes the leg up was simply that we were resilient people. We were born with some kind of resilience that allowed us to continue to work hard. And sometimes we had other kinds of things. Now some of these things, some of these privileges that I have, I can be grateful for because they mean a lot to me in my life. And some of them, Some of the privileges, I think, that should not be there at all. It should not be a privilege for me. And it upsets me when it is. Here's one story of privilege that I had to struggle with. I was working hard along with many of you for marriage equality. I was a single person when I started this ministry. I had said I would not get married until my gay and lesbian friends could also get married. I really just didn't want to get married. That was part of it. I just didn't want to get married. I had this view of marriage, that what marriage was, that I had kind of a negative view of, and so that was part of it, to be honest with you. But, you know, Greg and I had been living together for about 5 years, and he really wanted to get married. He really wanted to get married. And it meant a lot to him, and, you know, I love him. So I kind of struggled through that, and I thought, well, we could get married. We could do this. And at first I didn't know what to say, especially my good friend Nan, who's up here, one of the ministers up here. I was talking to Joan about it. Joan Conn-Schneider, who at that time was the minister in Savannah. We were on the way to the mountain to a meeting, and I was talking to her about it, and I said, well, you know, it bothers me, though, that I have this privilege and that Nan doesn't. You know, she can't marry her partner, and I feel really upset about that, you know, that I have this privilege and that I'm going to take advantage of it. She said, Jane, you take advantages of privileges every day, all the time. All the time. You take advantages of privileges that you have. Are you going to not do any of those kinds of things because of your privilege that you take advantage of all the time? And then Nan got excited about the wedding and said she was coming, and I said, oh, well, you helped officiate too, you know, so that made it sort of all right. So we got married. We got married, but it was a form of privilege that I had. Now, Nan herself is married, and in fact, if she had stayed in South Carolina, she's moved, but she could be married in South Carolina. All the states on the Eastern Seaboard have same-sex marriage except for Georgia. Well, I learned a lot, too, from this woman named Peggy McIntosh, who is sort of the person that brought a lot of these ideas closer to us. She's the one that came up with this idea that we had an invisible knapsack. And I was able to go to a conference and hear her, and she's just marvelous in how she explains how she did it. Initially, she was working on things related to curriculum, related to gender concerns, and she was very upset that men didn't just get it, you know, understand that, I mean, they were all for women having more opportunities, but they didn't want to diminish any of theirs so that women could have them. And she thought, well, they just don't understand that. And then she started thinking, maybe it's more than just a gender thing. There are other things in life maybe I don't understand, you know, some things. So I'll let her explain this to you herself.
I don't come in to their schools. Teachers who think that education isn't working for all of the students ask whether they can come to the SEED summer workshop. My subconscious knew perfectly well what my advantages were relative to my African American friends whose stories I knew. Now, I had been listening to their stories, but I had always been thinking in this way, how terrible for them. I had never thought, how exempt for me that I don't have those run-ins. How exempt for me. And I began to accumulate this list. After 3 months, a voice in me said, Peggy, write it down. It's probably the most important work you'll do in your life. So underlying SEED, which is my major project with K through 12 teachers, is the idea that everybody will be benefited if we lessen privileged systems in the curriculum, the teaching methods, and the whole school climate. I believe we can change the world's power systems in such a way that a basic floor is put under humanity. Food, clothing, shelter, water, some sense of self-determination, some affection. I believe it's possible for everybody.
So here's her list. This is the list that Peggy McIntosh came up with, that she said, here are privileges that white folks have that others in their invisible backpack. It's like tools that open doors for white folks. She said, I can shop without being followed around the store or being harassed. She said, I do not have to educate my children or my grandchildren to be aware of systemic racism for their own daily physical protection. It's not something I have to do. She said, I can swear or dress in secondhand clothes, thank goodness for me for that, or not answer letters without having people attribute these choices to the bad morals, the poverty or the illiteracy of my race. She says, I can do well in a challenging situation without being called a credit to my race. I'm never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. If my day, week, or year is going badly, I need not ask of each negative episode or situation whether it has racial overtones. I can be late to a meeting without having the lateness reflect on my race. I can be sure that if I need legal, medical, or financial help, my race will not work against me. I can choose blemish color or bandages in my flesh color and have them more or less match my skin. If a law enforcement officer pulls me over, I can be sure I haven't been singled out because of my race. And we've heard a lot of glaring statistics about that recently. I know you may have heard that if you're in the nation, if you're pulled over, you're twice as likely to be shot if you're African American than if you're white. But in Georgia, it's 3 times. 3 times. So, she says, we have these invisible backpacks, and sometimes they're related to different kinds of things in our society, different kinds of things where they're dominant groups. Maybe related to race, ethnicity, gender, age, physical ability, socioeconomic status, religion, sexual orientation, language, learning ability, styles, and other kinds of things. One thing that she didn't mention in that list, but that I've thought a lot about, is the fact of living here in this country. We're so, now you see so many things going on all over the world, what the world is like. Wow. So here's a list of privileges that we have just by living here, just by being here. We can drink a glass of water from the faucet without fear of becoming deathly ill. Most places around the country that cannot happen. Around the world, I should say. We can choose a religion that is different than the religion of the majority of people in the country without fear of being arrested or executed. Hallelujah. We can count on electricity being available in our residences and workplace almost all the time, unless there's a big storm or something. We can travel within the country freely without having to check in with authorities or get permission to do so. We have the right to own, use, and profit from the proceeds of land and other kinds of property without fear of the government suddenly taking it from us. Our children can have at least 12 years of public education and have access to an excellent university system. We live in a country in which employment was, before the Great Recession, consistently less than 5%, and is returning to that stabilization. I think it's 5.7 now. We can criticize our leaders without fear of being arrested. We live in a country in which one of the biggest health problems is people eating too much rather than not having enough to eat. And we live in a country that others are literally dying to get into. Great privileges that all of us have. So what do? We have some of these privileges. We're here, in this country. I'm white. What do? Well, I go back to the story of Buddha to think about some of this, because Siddhartha was a very privileged person. Very privileged, living in the palace and having every privilege in the world because of his caste, and also because of who he was and who his family was. Very athletic and healthy, all those good kinds of things. But he made it out of the gates, and he saw that that was not the way it was in the world. He saw that there were people, old people, sick people, dying people, people with great problems. He also saw a holy man that seemed to have some sort of sense of peace about him, and he thought, maybe that's what I need to do, become a holy man so I can have a better understanding of this. And I just can't deal with what's happening with all the injustice in the world. How am I going to deal with it, Any of you ever felt that way? Maybe I just need to go join a nunnery or something, or I don't know. I can't handle it. So indeed, he cut off his hair, and he went and joined this group, this yogi group, where they did all these kinds of interesting things. But nothing they did, they lived very, not just simply. I mean, they didn't eat hardly anything. He got very, very thin, so he was just bony, just about to die. But they were just doing without, thinking that would bring them some sort of knowledge and spirit, have an understanding, whatever. He's about dead, and a young girl came and offered him, here's a bowl of soup, you better eat this. And he did. And he came to the conclusion, there's got to be a middle way. I know I don't want to go live the life I did. But I can't starve myself and do without everything because some people are not as privileged as I was. There has to be a middle way. And so I go to that and think, there's got to be a middle way, Here's another story where I think about it. Here's another story of the privilege that I have. Many of you have been out to my home. I live in a beautiful place. Live on a pond. I have 7 acres out there. We have a labyrinth in the back that some of you helped me build. We have the maypole. It's just a grand place for children and everybody. We swim in the pond and boat in it. And it's just a grand place. I had some ministers, area ministers, over Friday. And the minister from Macon was there. She had come to visit, to meet with our cluster group. And she's looking around and she said, I just can't believe that you have this wonderful, wonderful place, that you live in. And I'm beginning to feel, but I don't, because I said, well, I didn't do anything to really deserve this. This property was my granddaddy's farm and my daddy's farm. And that's why I have it. I didn't do a doggone thing to get this. It was just given to me. And I said, but what I try to do, I like it. Folks, I like it. So what I try to do is I said, I will share it. I had y'all over, I had you here, the ministers. I have you all out. You can come out anytime and walk the labyrinth. Just, if you come and walk across the pond down, let me know first so I can tell my 88-year-old mama that somebody said she won't let who's that stranger, So I said, I have it, I'm going to share it. And that's the way that I've taken for my middle way of dealing with this privilege I have. And I hope that's okay. And here's something else we can do for privileges that we have. First of all, of course, we can work as some of us are doing. Some of us are coming Wednesday night to try to work even harder. Work to end oppression and diminish privilege. Work hard for that. Continue to work hard for that. But until then, use it for good. If you've got it, and there's something you can do with it for good, do it. I don't know if you saw the movie Selma. I hope you will go see it if you haven't. Now, there are some historical inaccuracies in it that everybody's bringing up, and yes, there are some historical inaccuracies with lots of folks and things. But for the most part, the story, it's a true story with some inaccuracies in it. But the idea of it is true. And one of the things that was true about it is that Martin Luther King said he invited folks of all colors and persuasions, come help us. We need you. We need you to come. And Unitarian Universalists were among the biggest groups that came. They came. So here they were, marching, singing, being a part of this group. And in fact, if you go see the movie, you see that 2 people died. Those were both Unitarian Universalists. Both the minister and the woman that they show in the movie, both of them Unitarian Universalists that had come down. Now, indeed, their deaths, they're sort of like martyrs for us, but their deaths got a whole lot of attention, got the country to thinking, what in the heck is going on? Now, it's too bad white people had to die for some people to wake up, okay? But the fact that some white people died did wake some people up to have some attention. So, indeed, sometimes some of our privileges allow us to be able to do some things to help out with the general concern and problems. For a long time, when I was working for gay rights and marriage equality, at that time, many folks felt they couldn't be out of the closet. Well, I could do some of that lifting up of concerns without those problems. And there are other ways that because of privileges you have, that you're able to do work for others that maybe they cannot do. Some people, because of economic security, may not be able to go tomorrow, Monday, and try to get some changes made because they can't just take off from their job maybe on a Monday. Maybe I can go there and do those kinds of things for them. Because my congregation backs me on that. They said, yes, that's part of your job if you think you need to go. Go. I can take those risks of maybe even being arrested. Because if I do get arrested, you all will have my back. I can get up here at 64 years old and do a dance, and if I fall flat on my face, either figuratively or literally, you will pick me up. And that's a privilege I have, and I know it, so that I can use those privileges, those security, to do some kinds of things that others may not be able to do. So, yes, I am a PC. What do I do with those privileges, though? I can't deny my whiteness, but I can proclaim and live as an anti-racist white person. And I will not shave my head and take vows of poverty and chastity, although I've been pretty chaste for a while. But I'm not going to take those vows. So instead, I'm going to take the middle way. I'm going to work with others to give up the negative privileges and shift the positive privileges to entitlements for all. That is what I'm going to try to do. And if I do those kinds of things, then maybe the joy I get from having my home, from having my family, from having this possibility of working with you all, maybe that joy that it brings will help me to be a better minister. And what a privilege that is. So, what's in your knapsack? We all have one. Every one of us has one. Maybe many of you may have dealt with different kinds of oppressions, but you also have privileges. What is in your knapsack? I invite you this week to spend some time exploring that and exploring your privileges and trying to determine your middle way. And keep in mind the words of the Buddha as you do. Be lamps unto yourselves, be your own confidence, hold to the truth within yourselves, as to the only lamp. Namaste.